I'd like to call the order to the Planning Commission of Oconee County. What is the date today? March 18th. I'm calling this to order, and the first order of business is the invocation. Can I get you to do that?
Yes, sir, Mike. Pray with me if you will. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. And we ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. And also keep Deputy Watts and his family in your prayers. In his name we pray. Amen.
Can I get you to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from March 4th?
So moved.
Second? Are there any corrections or changes or additions that we need to make to those? If not, all in favor? Aye. Mr. Gollin?
Yes.
Was that an aye in favor? Yes. Unanimous?
Yes.
We have public comments for non-agenda items. We don't have any of those at the moment. So we've got commission member comments. Does anybody have anything commission member-wise to say? No? No? I did want to make a quick comment before we get to the development standards discussion, public comment section. At our last meeting, it was very clear, and I'm so appreciative of the people that are attending this time as well, that a lot of the general public is unaware of the function and role of the Oconee County Planning Commission. So I wanted to spend a couple of minutes just letting people know that the County Planning Commission is governed by state law on what we can and can't do in the actions of that commission. Chapter 29, Section 6-29-340. It's the Comprehensive Plan Act of 1994. The law gives clear instructions as to what a planning commission's functions, powers, duties are as far as local planning is concerned. Additionally, Oconee County has code of ordinances that describe our power as well. Much of these mirror what the states suggest. These powers are described in the first paragraphs of Article 1 in Chapter 32 of our ordinances. Anybody that's not read them, here's a real quick Cliff Note version of what the rules that a planning commission must follow or must not. 1, it's not the role of a properly functioning planning commission to approve or deny subdivisions based on public opinion. That's against the law. It's not the role of a properly functioning planning commission to come up with policies that would target one business or target one property owner or a type of property owner. It is the role of a planning commission to have policies and procedures in writing so that if a developer is willing to follow those policies in full, that it'll provide a clear pathway for the approval process. In short, our role is not to govern, our role is to give guidance. So as we work through that process, we're hoping to get public opinion as to things that we can do to tell a developer, these are the rules you must follow. Starting on March 4th of this year, due to the high awareness of the growth in our area, the Planning Commission once again took up the task of evaluating our current development standards. It's our objective to find areas where we see conflicts in implementation, where we see policy ambiguity, areas where there's no policy or where we need more robust standards. That's what we're looking to accomplish as we're moving forward. At our last meeting, we heard many people that were opposed to the development on 130. I don't disagree. And while we're happy to be a platform for voicing frustration, please understand this doesn't really get us any closer to creating the standards that it is our objective to create. I just want to make sure it's clear that the kind of a please vote no on Highway 130 is not the role of a planning commission. We are looking for conversations about density standards, green space allocations, lighting, signage, speed limits on ingress, egress, access points, things like that. Last week, I heard several comments about needing an outside urban planner to come up with development standards for the area. While this might be a good idea, this is really step 6 or 7, and we're currently on step 2. I say that because in March of 2023, the Planning Commission looked into the process of utilizing a planning and development consultant firm, an urban planner, as you were. Except that we're really not an urban municipality. We're a lot of mixed use in a very large county. I say that because many residents are also unaware that county planning is hands-off when it comes to the property line of the municipalities. So things that are happening in Walhalla and Seneca and Westminster and whatnot, we stay out of those rules that they're making. Anyway, the several members met with this consulting firm, and we reported back to the public. And what we discovered was that the organizations that help the counties with this process first must have some sort of structure with which to start. Think of it as going to the doctor or the hospital. Simply saying, I need help, doesn't really accomplish anything. The doctor needs to understand what are the symptoms and what are the issues of concern. So the task of the planning department at this moment is to gather a list of issues that we can develop policy around for the entire county. Now, we've got a unique county. We've got a mountain region, we've got 4 municipalities, we've got 2 lakes, we've got thousands of acres of farmland. So we're definitely not a one-size-fits-all policy, but I'm hoping to hear that we hear from all of the areas of the county what their concerns are and what their needs are, so that as we're trying to come up with a backbone of standards, that we have something that if we did come and work with some sort of consultant in the future, we can say we need help with XYZ. The universal we need help, we're a very different county than the other 26 counties out there. And again, we're not an urban area. We do have urban areas, but those aren't under our work. So I'm hopeful that tonight's conversation, when we get into that part of the agenda, will be structured around planning opportunities, shortcomings, areas where we can form a backbone for improving these policies. So thank you. I was looking for somebody else to make the next statement, but it looks like it's still me, isn't it? All right, so we now have staff comments. Was not on the agenda. Was there anything? Okay. So let's get into the discussion then of development standards, which is I'm sure why everyone's here tonight, and we'll start with those public comments. So first on the list, Mr. Gary Owens. And we're going to have these at 4 minutes. I'll give you a 1 minute left and a time's up, and we're not going to be exactly rigid, but we are going to try to wrap up in that kind of time, just because there are quite a few on the list.
Certainly understand. I've timed it, and I think I'll make it.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Gary Owens. As the chairman mentioned, I live in Salem. I'm the president of the Advocates for Quality Development. We're a not-for-profit that was founded in 2006. We represent approximately 5,000 residents in Oconee and Pickens County, and in Pickens County in particular, they're from all over the county. Since my remarks 2 weeks ago at the Planning Commission meeting, AQD has received numerous calls, emails, social media postings, etc., regarding the need for new and updated development standards in Oconee County. It has been recognized by our members and other citizens that Pickens County has recently taken a leadership role in completely updating their standards. The Pickens Initiative could provide Oconee County with a comparative framework to help us quickly review options and adopt development standards that meet our needs, especially if our planning staff, which is already, of course, overburdened, can tap into some outside expertise that you were referring to. On March 4th, I recommended that you consider an RFP and hiring a development planning contractor whose efforts would be led and coordinated by the planning director. The job would be to completely revise and update our outdated existing standards. I'm very interested in hearing more feedback tonight about that proposal and your thoughts. This effort is extremely important and timing is critical. With Pickens County moratorium on new developments, the pace of development in Oconee County will speed up. Without updated development standards, the large-scale projects already knocking on our door will negatively impact Oconee County before we have a say in where and how we'd like growth to happen. As we all heard on March 4th, citizens in Oconee County are very concerned about the high-density, traffic-laden proposal called the Kiwi River development. There was a total of 15 individual speakers that addressed the proposed development, the huge risk it presents in terms of density, traffic, safety, etc., to the county. Given that this land that is control-free, without new and revised development standards, along with stronger land management guidelines, this project could produce a density close to the city of Walhalla. While there was a prior plan to develop this parcel, this is a new developer and a new plan with significantly higher density. In addition, this proposed development is only a symptom of what can happen in Oconee County in any area that's currently control-free. Waiting to see when and if this developer purchases the land ignores the reality that a similar threat could also rise tomorrow on any different parcel within the county. Our request really is not a knee-jerk reaction. It really is prudent planning. I very much appreciated the supportive comments on March 4th from Mrs. Spicer and Mr. Gallen regarding the need for updated development standards and the need to have professional planning consultant to assist the Planning Commission and staff in this work. I also appreciated the supportive comments from Mr. Adams regarding the need for standards relative to density in the county. Chairman Johnson, I heard the very thorough comments of support that you made to the County Council on March 5th regarding the recommended passage of the junkyard ordinance. I think you did a great job on that. I hope that you and the Commission will engage around development standards in a similarly aggressive posture. Thank you for letting me speak to you, and thank you for your service to Oconee County.
Thank you. Watson Johnson.
My name is Watson Johnson. I live in Salem also. I don't have any prepared remarks. My point is, before moving here, we lived in Lexington County in the Chapin area for 30 years. And what I see here is where Lexington County was 30 years ago, before all the growth occurred. And growth was allowed to occur without a lot of guidelines or restrictions, controls in place. And what has happened is now basically knee-jerk reactions. Moratoriums had to be put in place and overlay districts had to be put in place. The problem is, and what none of us want to see, is that the infrastructure and all of the support necessary for growth, and this was all over the county, was not put in place. And now you can't get around. Traffic is horrible, support services aren't there. They've had to contract with outside services to get ambulance service. Everything is not there. And as Gary just mentioned about Pickens County, Lexington County, and I can put you in touch with the people there, has gone through all of this in the last 2 or 3 years. And to put all these things in place, as you mentioned, Chairman, green space and trophy trees, controlled areas, so that everything wasn't overdone. We were able to get through no clear cutting in new developments, and also the road requirements that were necessary. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Mark Torres.
Good evening, I'm Mark Torres, I live in District 1. I'd like to remind you of something regarding the Kiwi River development. When the project was presented to you at your meeting on September 7th of last year, the presenter was asked whether a traffic study was to be prepared. He replied that the State Highway Department would make a study since Highway 130 is a state road, and that the county would accept that study. Then at your October 16th meeting, 2 representatives of the DOT appeared. You quizzed them rather extensively about the Highway 130 study, which is appreciated. He indicated that the study would be concerned with ingress to and egress from the highway, curb cuts, turning lanes, etc. But they said that their study would not consider the impact of additional traffic due to the project. The representative said, and I approximately quote, "All we do is review and approve the access." Approve access to the subdivision, you asked? That's it, they replied. The development comes to Oconee County for approval. They come to SCDOT for access to the state highway system. Later you asked, do you look at the bigger picture? Duke Energy emergency response, especially across the dike? They answered, and again I quote, "We generally don't. Emergency services is a county function, as is the planning, so we assume the county is managing that portion of it." That's not involved in the road study, you asked? No, they said. I'm afraid that this is insufficient. Traffic density on Highway 130 and emergency access and possible evacuation are the key issues. Curb cuts and merging lanes are details, which I'm sure the state will work out. But if the state will not address traffic density and emergency factors in this study, you cannot accept it as your own. If a traffic study is somehow mandated, you need to obtain an independent study, one commissioned by you, not the developer, that addresses the road capacity and emergency access and evacuation issues. People come before you and before other venues all the time stating that traffic on that road is bad now and will become impossible if the development proceeds on the scale currently contemplated. Occasionally, others say that the same arguments have been made for years and have never come to pass. This is all hand-waving. You and we need facts and professional analysis. I sincerely hope that you are planning to obtain this critical information now before things progress further. And I recommend, in light of your comments, that you make this a part of your overall plan, that these factors, traffic density and emergency requirements, are included as part of your general requirements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ron Klinsick. I'm sure I'm not getting that right. C-I-L-E.
Solensic.
I butchered it, didn't I?
Yeah. Yeah, my name is Ron Solensic. I also live in Salem. And talking about the development of planning standards, particularly as it would apply to the development question, I would think that the Planning Commission would at least, at a bare minimum, take into account the existing highway infrastructure that exists adjacent to this development, and also the capacity of the infrastructure to be expanded if necessary to accommodate this. So, you know, you say you don't have any development standards for this particular area, and I'm just, you know, requesting that you take these considerations into account when you do develop your standards. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to get a new pen next time, because a lot of these words are a little scratched out. Jerry Yantis.
Sorry about that writing.
No, it's just the pen looks like the ink, is so some of the letters aren't letters.
All right. Thanks for kicking it off with some background. I think that should help shape some of the conversation tonight and in the future. Last time you met, you talked about the idea of distributing housing across different areas to help distribute traffic and try and address construction. I'd be interested in how that goes forward. It sounds like a great idea, but how do you designate the spaces for the different kind of housing, whether it be high density here, low density there? How do you actually push the housing across the county to make that kind of vision happen? That'd be interesting to hear. You talked about, you went through the litany of the different standards that exist, the different ordinances that are talked about. It would be nice if future agendas would specify which of those ordinances you want to start to look at per meeting. That way you get people here that would be interested in those type of issues and do some background and help give you some more direct information about that, rather than a bunch of complaints. So that's that. In terms of large developments, we know the one there on 130 is obviously got everybody's attention, but there are a lot of other large developments going on here, and there's a propensity for developers to just clear cut, strip everything away, start to eliminate the trees. Certainly if it's for agriculture purposes, that makes a great deal of sense. That's what they're allowed to do. It's the law of the state to allow that to happen. But if they clear cut a property, I would ask that you put a tree ordinance in place that includes something like, if you clear cut, then it's assumed that that's going to be for agricultural purposes. Therefore, you're not going to build on it for the next 10 or 15 years. You're going to let it grow back and use it again, continue to use it as agricultural purposes. If it is going to become a residential or mixed-use property, then the tree ordinance would include something that would say you need to leave some number of existing trees per parcel, and then some sort of a ratio of 1 acre of trees per 25 acres of construction. That way we get some green space. We heard somebody talk last time about the value of trees from an energy conservation and aesthetic purposes. Those would help try and manage that. So some ideas that were specific to the ordinances. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Lynn Martin.
I'm Lynn Martin from Tomasi, and I just want to bring a few of my concerns. We are a business owner in Salem, and many people, newcomers, visitors, they stop by our place and say, Oconee County is so beautiful. I hope that you're doing what you can to protect it. And anybody that knows me knows that that is absolutely at my heart and my husband's heart. But listening to what you can and cannot do, I just picked up on some things that I would like to suggest would be to stop any kind of large development right now until those policies, procedures, and standards are in place. Absolutely stop and not ruin what we have. Let's don't go back and try to fix something that we can start something right now to protect the beauty we have in our county. And yes, it is not a one-size-fits-all, because where I live in the lower parts of the county, totally different. The development planning meeting, your name, I would like conservation to be in that name, because when I think of development, I think of how I can drive just a little few minutes from here and see what I call development. When you scan down every tree, it looks like a tornado has already run through that subdivision. And there's not a tree one. You see lots of houses, and it is absolutely absurd to treat our land that way and not have something in place to protect that. And the one thing I really want is representation, true representation for these policies, procedures, and standards of native Oconeans like me, newcomers who come here and want to be a part of, they moved here because it is so beautiful. Now let's protect it. Let's put some things in place. I'm not saying that people can't still come here, but we need to protect what we have because it is so beautiful. Young adults, their needs need to be represented. Absolutely farmers. We have got to protect our land, our local land, or we're not going to have anything local. We're not going to have local food. You know, the push is local, local. Well, it starts right here in planning commissions in our county and each of us as individuals to protect what we have. So I would be a part of policies, procedures, and standards. I don't know what the requirements are, but I think the one requirement would not be someone that's going to sit and benefit from overdevelopment of our land. It's the overdevelopment that absolutely needs to be stopped. And protection of our beautiful resources, our water resources. We don't want to be like Atlanta and not have enough water to provide for our people. And that is another point I want to make. I had a Oconian tell me, he said, we have so many people, we've opened up the doors, people who've lived here our whole lives. We have a hard time going fishing and going to the very lakes that we were brought up on and to take our children. So those are things that we need to keep in mind, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Eddie Martin.
My name's Eddie Martin. I'm from Tomasi. I am the Executive Director of Oconee Preservation Unlimited Stewardship Trust, a nonprofit organization for the protection and conservation of Oconee County and its open space. We spoke at the last county council meeting about the need for directives here and some restrictive policies to stop the rampant growth or to help curb the rampant growth that is now becoming commonplace in Oconee County. We need some structure. We need things in place that will allow some preservation and some conservation of the open spaces here. And I'm in favor of some of the other speakers' comments about protection of the trees and the tree cover. We need that as well here. I native of this county. I have worked in several places. I have lived in a couple of other places, and I have seen the destruction that comes about by overdevelopment. I was a worker at 3M in Greenville. When I first went to work there, you could look south and all you saw was trees and a couple of golf courses. By the time I left there 20 years later, all you saw from that point was rooftops everywhere, high density. We've made mention of high density here several times tonight. I think that is a proper start to look at to see if you can't curb some of this. The other thing is moratorium. I've heard moratorium several times. We understand that Pickens County has put one in place. As my wife said, it might be a good opportunity for this county to do so for just a while until we figure out what path we're going to take and how we're going to protect what we have left. I'm also in favor of an agricultural district or multiple agricultural districts where other states have found the worth of the agricultural units that are in place, and we need to protect those as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Paul Pelovich.
First of all, thank you for pronouncing my name correctly.
Hey, I got one
Never
right.
happens.
Cool.
My name is Paul Pelovich. I live in Kiyawaki. I'm going to make a request of this planning commission, and then I'm going to give you some facts. My request is please don't let Oconee County, South Carolina, turn into Lee County, Florida. 4 years ago, I left Fort Myers, which is in Lee County. And they had such uncontrolled population growth. When we left, the county officials, through the paper and the news TV stations, were telling the residents, if you have a medical emergency, drive yourself to the hospital because we cannot hire enough ambulance companies to meet the needs of all the people in Lee County. With what we're talking about now, a 1900 house or building development, according to United States Bureau of Transportation statistics, there's 2.3 cars per household in South Carolina. So this one development would add an additional 4,370 vehicles driving on Route 130. United States Census Bureau documents an average of 2.53 people per household in South Carolina, so that would be an additional 4,807 people to need fire protection, police protection, medical, everything else. So, again, my request is don't let Oconee County, South Carolina turn into Lee County, Florida. And I might even suggest that you study Lee County, Florida, and their development standards so you know what not to do. Thank you.
Nancy Kroll.
Hi, my name's Nancy. I am a resident of Waterford. I wasn't going to say anything, and then I looked around the room. I'm like, I look different than everyone else because I'm probably one of the youngest people in here. But young people do want to come here. They want to come here because we want a different way of life. We want a life that has a reverence for nature, that appreciates family, that appreciates getting to know your neighbor and actually knowing who your neighbors are. And I think something that's left out of a lot of planning and standards are, what do you really want your community to feel like, and how do you want people to feel welcomed? It's not welcoming to sit in traffic. It's not welcoming to see all the trees come down. It is not welcoming to not know who your neighbors are. We left Miami Beach when we first moved there, 15 years ago. The traffic was not what it was. The high-rises hadn't all been built. We moved to a section of Miami Beach where we knew our neighbors. We knew who was there. High-rises started going up. A trip to the grocery store that took 5 minutes now takes 15. The distance hasn't changed, the traffic has. For those of us who live up further north, like in Salem, I'm up in Waterford, we know that's going to add time to get to emergency services, time to get to the grocery store, time to get to the emergency vet. I think it's really important that in part of making your standards, that you don't forget. I know numbers are important, I know facts are important, but I really feel that we're forgetting about why it is we're here is to develop a community. And I think community is more than just how many houses we can throw in. Community is how are we living together, how are we respecting each other, how are we respecting our environment together. So I think it's really important that we don't forget that piece of it. I mean, I can repeat everything everyone said is important, and I love it. And I was ready to yield my time to Gary Owens if he needed more to say. If he needed more, I was gonna be like, okay, you can have my time. But then I thought it's really important that there are a lot of younger people seeking out places like this. We're seeking it. So it's kind of hypocritical for me to say, oh, don't build these houses because the young people want to come here. But what about the houses that are already here that are sitting empty? Are there incentives that we could put in our standards to make people be full-time residents and, no, I don't own this giant house that I'm only here for maybe a month out of the year? Is there something that we can put in standards that would change that? It also changes your community. It changes how you are with your neighbors. I saw that firsthand in Miami Beach, snowbirds. Very different neighbors than your regular neighbor that's always been there. So I hope I hope that we can come to some sort of standard that can slip that in. I don't even know how you do that because it's subjective. But I hope somewhere it's in there. And thank you for explaining what your committee's purpose is, because I honestly had no idea. I thought I was going to come here and be like, let's make a change. So thank you for explaining that. But I also, if you could add in, okay, what do we need to do next to make that change? Like, who do we go to next? Like, who do we go to next to talk to? I'd like to hear that too. So thank you.
Don Taylor.
First of all, Don Taylor, Salem, thank you so much for your responsibilities. And just coming, live in Salem, and, you know, I've seen development that's occurring on a very quick rate, but not a very large rate in the Salem area. And my concern is not based on what's good for me is not good for thee. This is a popular county, and it's going to grow. And your responsibility is to see how that growth takes place. And when I see what's happening on 130, it concerns me because we're not talking so much about just a development, another suburban area, another community. We're almost talking about another city that's being proposed. About half the population of the city of Seneca. And the amount of traffic, the amount of support systems that are going to be required to support that is going to affect the quality of life of each and every one of us. I understand that. And I know that you do as well. My question for you is there anything that the Planning Commission can do to slow the growth of these huge development projects that are coming into our county? In other words, 1,900 homes or so, plus commercial businesses that may be, put up in this particular development may occur, but do they have to occur all at the same time? Can that development be done over time so that the infrastructure can absorb the phases of that particular subdivision? So instead of putting up 1,900 over a period of time that I know that Ryan Home can build in no time at all, can it be done over a time span of years so that they still get what they want, but the county is able to absorb that. The road system is able to absorb it. The police departments, fire departments are able to absorb that. I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't know if that's specifically your responsibility or recommendation that you can make to a developer, but it is something that concerns me. So, speaking from the older people of the county, I thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Dave Emanuel.
Thank you. I used to be one of those accursed part-time residents and moved here permanently last year. I think you mentioned that we're on step 2 instead of step 6, and I think the cart's still in front of the horse. On your comprehensive plan, land use element, objectives, goals, strategies, establishment of an efficient, equitable, and mutually compatible distribution of land uses that complements Oconee County's traditionally rural lifestyle. Without tying your development standards to your land use plan, I think you're just spinning your wheels. The land use plan should be the governing document. The proposed development would be, excuse me, 1,900 houses, approximately 3,800 to 4,000 people on just over 1 square mile of land. 1 square mile is 640 acres. 685 acres is 1.07 square miles. By way of comparison, Houston, Texas has a population density of 3,599 per square mile. Phoenix, Arizona, which is the state capital and largest city in Arizona, has a population density of 3,105 per square mile. San Antonio, Texas, 2,876. And Atlanta, Georgia, 3,686 people per square mile. So in essence, what you're doing is allowing, without proper safeguards, you're allowing a portion of any highly densely populated city to be picked up and stuck down in Oconee County. And I think unless you're always going to have a battle between your land use plan and your development standards unless you coordinate them. And I think that's essential so that you get the type of development you want, where you want it developed. You have character areas that are consistent with your land use plan, and you can set those out so that you have properly developed areas where they belong. And you can maintain what you need. But 3,800 people in 1 square mile is not complementary to a rural lifestyle. That's what's called a city. Thank you.
Lisa Crystal,
Yes.
Dents.
Good evening. Lisa Kissel-Dents, and I am from Waterford Point in Seneca, South Carolina. This evening started on a really interesting note. Mike, I appreciate the time that you took to review standards and guidelines and the significance and the importance of establishing them and enforcing them and utilizing them as a planning commission. Several times this evening, I heard the word risk, maybe 2. There were a lot of concerns raised, but I don't hear the word risk. In establishing guidelines and standards, a risk assessment should properly be utilized to determine what the risks are to move forward with any planning activity. When you establish standards, you're not just arbitrarily determining what they are. You're looking at the risks that you are trying to mitigate in order to move forward. There were a lot of concerns raised here tonight, many of them very valid. But at the same time, as Oconee County is growing as an attractive location for people to come for vacation, to spend time with their family, or to be a permanent resident, that is a big part of the economy here. Standing here and saying we don't want any more people is not necessarily the right course or actions of our communities or in consideration of our planning. But we need to do it right. Several examples were shown tonight on areas that did not take risk into consideration. What is the risk of putting a 1,900 home community together with retail space over a 1 square mile area? What is the risk to our community? What are we considering, numbering them out, and what are we doing to mitigate the risk in the event that we did this? It's not every day, but it's too often that if you drive 130, 130 is shut down because there is a serious accident or fatality. We are also challenged by density versus geography. What is the risk associated with that? We basically have a loop. One end of 123 up through Kiwi, and then around down for 130. That's your main artery around this lake. We are limited by geographic challenges. You're not going to build a bridge over the lake. You're limited to how much you can expand. You could build a bridge over the dams. We could do that. There's financial impact associated with that. Is this something that we're up for? Looking at the trees and the trees being removed, there's a risk to removing that. Our ecosystem is going to be challenged by that. We have a lot of concerns being listed, but appropriately a risk assessment of this and establishing guidelines and specifications around risk will prevent us from being one of those cities that were mentioned already where they didn't do it right. The growth will continue to come here. That's not a bad thing. If you've got the planning up front, that you've mitigated your risks, and you continue to grow your communities in a successful and a responsible manner. How can we avoid having another fatality on this road that may not have occurred if we didn't build that community? One other thing to think about. You have places like the Lighthouse and even downtown Seneca that are still struggling with bringing resources in and people to work. We're looking at bringing in this 1,900 homes. They're looking at creating retail spaces. It's further up away from where, standard rate of pay, $17 an hour, that those people may or may not be able to get up there. What if this doesn't work out? What if the planning was not adequate? His feasibility, the developer's feasibility study is off. And all of a sudden, he's putting all this retail space in there, and it doesn't come to fruition because we don't have the right number of people that can go up and support it in a working capacity. What is the economic impact of that? So I mentioned quite a few different things, but the purpose is take an approach of risk. What are the risks, and how do we mitigate them? And then after you've mitigated all the risks, if it still looks like a good thing, then we should do it. But if we haven't addressed it from a risk perspective, then we haven't done our jobs on the front end as a planning commission. Thank you for your time.
Martha, and I can't see the last name. It starts with an S, it looks like? Steele?
Yes. Good evening. I'm Martha Steele, and my husband and I live in District 3, and we have enjoyed living here for 23 years. We are asking the Planning Commission to work with the County Council to find and designate the money needed to find and hire a planning expert to formulate and develop good, workable developmental standards for now and for the future to meet the issues that will be faced by Oconee County. These standards should address indiscriminate clear-cutting for any developments that are being considered. These standards should address the upgrading of lighting and signage that is permitted in any new development. The standards should require a comprehensive safety study for the present and for the future of each proposed development. These standards should require upfront application fees before the county will even consider consulting with a developer to stop frivolous proposals that would waste staff time and taxpayer money. One other thing that I'd like to mention as far as the preservation of farmland, I grew up in Virginia on a farm. My parents had a farm that it was part of an old plantation that had a grist mill on it, and the pond was a mill pond. 70 acres that wound very much like many of the places on Lake Kiowee. If we had been able to sell that farmland when my parents died, my siblings and myself, we would have made a lot of money. Not that we wanted to do that for development, but the county where the farm was had passed a law, an ordinance, that said farmland had to stay farmland. We didn't complain. It was for the betterment of that county and of the state. Thank you so much for letting me voice my concern.
We've only got a few more. Perry Smith.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and esteemed commission. For the record, I am Perry Smith of Mountain Rest in District 2. Since almost everyone here is from County Council District 1, I'm speaking as a county citizen and will try my best to represent the other 4 county council districts since those folks are unable to attend due to mostly being working folks. I actually left work a little early today to get here on time. There are a few words that elitists use that I hear over and over in speeches. One word is safety. What you really mean is control. You think people here are too ignorant to ensure their own safety. Instead, they must be dictated to and controlled to ensure their safety. Another phrase you elitists like to use is quality of life. I have to question, whose quality of life are you concerned with? Your own view of what everyone else's quality of life should be? Well, you do this without regard to how that will actually infringe on others' true quality of life. By changing the freedoms of what a person can do on their property, you negatively impacting how their families have lived for multiple generations. Do you not see the direction this will head in? Will you dictate the color of our houses, the landscaping? Are you really trying to push a socialist agenda? Freedom may scare you people, but you can't control everyone. We should be free from government overreach, like you are insisting to happen. And this request to completely overhaul the development standards is just that, more government overreach. What all of you want is to make Oconee County your very own personal HOA. You don't mind being told what to do. Well, just like me, the majority of us homegrown citizens in this county do not want to be told what to do. If I wanted security, I'd move in with you behind the gates on the lake. The problem with you people and AQD is you want to impose your own personal wants and needs on the rest of us, and we will not allow it. I'd like to know exactly why all these people are not fussing about the new 2,000 lots opening up in the cliffs. I wonder if they're too scared to tangle with those richer people in the reserve. I just wonder. Are they too scared? What about the 530 some odd lots in QE subdivision that have not been built on? That's 2,500 homes. Imagine that. That's more houses that's going on that 765 acres. And those 2,500 homes will be built way before those on that 765 acres. Let me repeat that. 2,500 homes still left to be built on QE in the reserve. Why don't all of you people just pool your money together and buy the property, place it in conservation, and sign it over to the county? Again, why don't you put more skin in the game besides your tongues? Every one of you here and against that subdivision could all put $50K and stop it. But you'd rather get some ordinance put in place that will affect the entire county because of your selfishness. I remember when AQD took a farmer to court in Ebenezer because he had a farm. They wanted him to stop farming on the lake. It appears AQD only cares about the elitists on the lake. They don't care about the farmers or county progress. Just remember, in America, we have the freedoms to buy and sell our land. It's a God-given constitutional right, and we should protect and treasure it. No one should be able to stop that. Thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Johnson.
Absolutely, thank you. Mr. Smith, I do apologize, and I do need to say, and I should have said it at the beginning, I'm going to ask the audience not to respond and not to comment. Let everybody say what they have to say. We've got two more folks and a letter here. Tom O'Neill.
Thank you for having me speak my piece. As you can tell, I'm not a Southerner by birth, but I'm a Southerner by choice. I've been in South Carolina for 33 years, owning property. I've been a resident for 23 years. I came from Detroit, Michigan. While I was sitting there, I remembered my boyhood home in Detroit was a block and a half away from farm field. You can imagine what's happened over those subsequent years. Oconee County, and Mike, don't diminish what you people have to do, and what responsibilities and what you can do to help make Oconee County what drew us here. First of all, it's very unique geographically. Part of the problems we experience today are because we've got these beautiful lakes around here. You cannot go east or west without running into a lake, so we can't just build another highway. The north-south 130 is constrained by the lake and the spillway. Too often, bureaucrats in government look at revenue versus quality of life. We cannot intermix those. I remember first time I was experienced or revenue was going to be the answer was with the lottery, casino gambling, and now in a lot of locations, the sale of illegal drugs. Because the tax revenue is going to take care of everything. It never has and never will. The cost of administration far exceeds the revenue. Everybody here before me has taken and discussed the major issues of the concerns. We like Oconee County the way Oconee County is. We know it's going to change. But we can't have an ambitious developer take advantage of the people in this community by foisting on a development which is said may be 30, 40 years before it's fully developed as being a generation of revenue for the county. I appreciate your time and effort to let me come up here and say it. And I feel very proud and that, as I read today on the internet, my generation, there's only 1% of us left. If you were born between 1930 and 1946, there's only 1% of us left. Take it from us, we've seen it all, and we've seen a lot of smoke and mirrors. Don't diminish your ability and your responsibilities to this community and this county. Thank you very much.
David McMahon.
Afternoon, commission members, chairman. Hope y'all doing well. My name's David McMahon. I can tell you who everybody in this room can blame for about all this overdevelopment, Crescent Resources. Back in the 1980s when they released all this land around the lake to start developing, and I'm sure probably 85–90% of people in this room live on a Crescent Resource development or know of somebody that does. So I don't remember back in the 80s when the folks was complaining about overdevelopment, anybody cared back then, but that's just a footnote. The reason why I'm here today is to talk about a situation where, and by the way, I like what you said, Mr. Chairman, about the Planning Commission is not supposed to or is against the law to even target somebody. The Planning Commission cannot do that. Is that correct, what you said? That's exactly what happened to my community back in 2009 by 3 members of Oconee County Council who lived on the lake, by at least 2 Planning Commission members, and at that time, the planning director and officers of the AQD. I've got everything right here to prove what I'm saying. I don't talk unless I can back up what I'm saying. In 2009, my community was fixing to be swamped with a development that was going to come in and take over our little community and turn it into what their lifestyle was. My community wanted to stay how we felt our lifestyle should be. We've done everything right through citizen-initiated zoning. The planning director at the time said everything was fine. It was going to go through. For 7 months, it stalled. We could not figure out why our zoning, as how we wanted to be, was stalled. And we did finally find out after many FOIA requests. The FOIA requests came about, and these, you've got some of the handouts right here that I can prove to you from 2009, where AQD officers, one of them is your AQD president currently here right now in these emails, who colluded with these planning commissioners and the county councils to change my zoning that my community wanted into their way of thinking and their lifestyles and their zoning requests. And they did it with free legal advice from, at that time, the county attorney. If you will look on the first page, you'll see an invoice of all the, at that time, Tom Martin, the county attorney, billed the county for people in the AQD, and I bet a lot of AQD members don't even realize this. I believe it was around $1,600 was billed to the county citizens of Oconee County for legal advice to the AQD to figure out how to destroy my community. It's all right there in black and white. I can show the emails and everything, but I'd have to bring a box in to show the emails that I FOIA'd the county for at least 7 months. I finally got it through my attorney, and you should have seen all the things that they were talking about me and my community in there, and they never thought that I would get through my attorney. My point is, $1,600 that I know of went to legal advice for the AQD, Jim Codner, all of them. And I've got right here where I did one for you, and Oconee County, the county that I lived in and grew up all my life, worked and paid taxes, and my family did. My family's been here well over 100 years. They were going to charge me $880 just for me to get information about my zoning request. Little did I know that the AQD officers and 3 council members was getting free legal advice about how to screw me over in my land. Now, you can believe it if you want to. It's right there in writing. I just brought a handful of emails that would make your jaw drop as to what happened to my community. I'd have to bring a box in to show you. The point I'm up here, and I'm just shaking because I don't understand why so many people worry about their lifestyle. What about my lifestyle? What about the man that lives in a little single-wide trailer trying to work jobs and make ends meet? What about the planning commission at the time just being fair to everybody? It's not all about the lake. There's a lot of different demographics in this county. The farming communities. I'm the biggest advocate for farming in this county. I just don't, what I'm asking this commission to do is to be fair and just. If you have any more AQD members wanting to slide in the back door like they did in 2009 and start telling the rest of us how to live, just be fair and just and don't bend to the special interest. That's what this is, a special interest. We're all Oconeeans trying to survive. And my little piece of land and a guy that's living on a cliff in a shack, that's his little piece of paradise too, okay? That's all I'm asking. Be fair to everybody in Oconee County. Thank you.
I've got one more letter to read into the record here. It is from Steve Smith. It says, in 2022, the Planning Commission inappropriately attempted to eliminate the 50-foot right-of-way requirement on private roads. There appears to be an interest by a member of the Planning Commission for personal gain. I encourage folks to watch prior public meetings on the topic. 6/6/22, 7/7/22, 7/19/22, 8/1/22. You'll notice the previous meetings that there is not a best interest of the public to change the right-of-way requirements on private roads. Thank you, Steve Smith. That ends the public comment section of our agenda.
Can I have just one comment, since I didn't sign it?
Are you all okay with
Motion to, let,
second? All in favor? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. I guess it was gonna be said, but it wasn't.
1 minute.
Sharon DeRitter, District 1. Since we're gonna talk about policies, I need speed limits, write it down, sidewalks, and I'll tell you that there's some developments, the builder says 27 inches, I put in a 27-inch sidewalk because that's what you told me to do. 4 foot would be good, 27 inches is like a dog path. Gated versus non-gated subdivision policies. I don't know if we've got that, because inside this gated area, it's their private road, so I don't know how that works out. Noise levels, if these developers build an open air, I'm gonna say like an auditorium, I'm not gonna say like a football stadium, but I'm just giving you some ideas. Height of buildings, I haven't ever heard anybody talking about it, but if we can go 4-story or 6 stories high, wow, that footprint gets small and that density gets larger. Traffic studies, I like the idea that we heard, that it's a third party. Not given that the developer's paying for the traffic study, but they should be paying for it, but it should be a third party. Infrastructure needs to have a study done on that too, because on Kiwi River Road, you will see about 400 feet off of 130, you can see the manhole cover. So when Oconee Joint Sewer Authority came to you last, I don't know when it was, they did an annual for 2023, and they have this area that we're talking about as being coming before them. So I believe there's sewer on that side, but not on the west side of that road. So I think an infrastructure study, because last year or the year before, we had Fort Hill Gas could not provide enough gas pressure. I'm going to say, I don't know, 8-inch line could not provide, because there's only one line that comes up on that east side of the county. So when everybody turns their heaters on and hot water heaters and fireplaces and stuff, we shut down because it was like 18 degrees. And my generator wouldn't kick on because it was so low on the pressure. So infrastructure studies have to be done. I don't know what zoning policies are for development either, because I know planning and zoning, you guys are all down there in that department down there. So I don't know how zoning policies get involved in your planning policies, and that's just that.
Commercial percentage-wise versus residential size in some development. I don't know if I build a development that's only 4 acres or 769 acres, what's the percentage of commercial that I can put in there? I do not know that. If a developer fails, let's just say he built 25%, 50%, houses aren't being built, whatever you want to say, but the developer runs and leaves the county, and what's going to happen to that piece of property? Who's going to be responsible? Impact fees, I don't know how that pays for or how much it is. I don't know if it's been revamped. Development fees too. I don't know if there's a development fee we can charge that helps pay for fire, all that other stuff. And the taxes. I know we have taxes here that are pretty low in this county. I love it, and I love it. That's why I moved from Orlando, Florida, because of that. But taxes are based on maybe density, not just on the value of a home. That's all I got to say. Thank you guys very much.
And ma'am, did we get your name?
Oh, Sharon DeRitter, District 1.
Thank
Did
you.
I not say it? I thought I did. Sorry.
All right. So let's start our discussion with development standards here. Does anybody have any comments based on either what we heard tonight or
I'll
input?
start.
Okay.
Good evening, all of you. Most of you are in District 1, which I represent. So thank you for coming. It's good to hear from you. I heard a couple common themes from you all. Trees were mentioned a number of times. I like that idea. I know that your councilman, John Elliott, has asked that a tree ordinance be developed as a development standard in the county. So we'll see where that goes. If he has support from you guys and you want to let him know that you like that idea, that would be really helpful. I know Eddie, Mr. Martin, you mentioned a moratorium. Moratoriums, we can only suggest that the council would have to approve that idea. That's a tough one. You have a lot of particulars or parameters, I guess, to set up a moratorium to make sure you're not sued. And the attorney is very concerned about that, so that's an iffy there. Mr. Ritter, you mentioned height. My understanding is that we're restricted on height around building because of the airport. So we do have a height restriction. If a developer fails, our developers are bonded, so we do have some cushion there. I was thinking about why we got here and how we got here, and truly it goes back probably to 2017 when the governor established some opportunity zones in the county. Kiwi River was declared an opportunity zone, as was the Mill Hill in Utica. And what makes an opportunity zone? A low-income area. So the developers are encouraged to come and develop this low-income area and develop it. Economic reasons. That coupled with a very aggressive advertising campaign for Oconee County. In 2018, I want to say Destination Oconee. It got really aggressive with putting the decals on the government vehicles, and then it went into every form of advertising medium available, whether it was radio, digital, TV, National Geographic with the Oconee Bells. And some would say it's been very successful bringing all the growth here. So how we got here and why is interesting. I would suggest if you want to slow it down or you want to question it, reach out to our delegation, Sandifer Whitmire and Thomas Alexander, and see what they say. Reach out to the governor and say, hey, we're here in Oconee. When's the last time you came to visit? Talk to us about some of this development that's going on. Just see what he says. Could you pull up for me, James, the first page of Chapter 24 of our Code of Ordinances? That's it. That's chapter 24 entitled Planning and Development. So when we say we need professional outside help, that says it all. We do have some land regs, some land use regulations, but we're lacking a little bit, as you can see. So now, James, another question. Are we at the 5-year mark of reviewing our comp plan?
We're year 4 now to turn in for year 5.
So do we have to review it this year, or is it next year?
Do it at the end of next year.
At the end of next year. Are we going to ask for outside help for that review?
We already have.
So whoever you ask for that outside view, could they also help us consolidate maybe our chapters 32, 38, and 26? Maybe help us with a unified performance ordinance? Maybe get a quote from those guys and see if that's doable? Because if they're going to come here and help us with our comp plan, maybe they can also help us with that?
It's ACOG that's helping us with our comp plan update.
Okay.
We can ask them if they'd be willing to, I mean, we need a motion for y'all to do that.
Oh, can I make that motion now, Mr. Chairman?
Make a motion.
Make a motion to ask ACOG if they will, when they come and review our comp plan, if they would also come and look at our ordinances and help us combine 32, 38, and 26 into a unified performance ordinance or unified development ordinance.
There is a second by Gary. So discussion.
James, will you pull up the state regs for planning?
The 94,
Yes.
live Googling, hang on.
I don't want to mislead the audience. Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what our ordinance is directing us to.
Some of our ordinances do direct back to this. This was the original statewide ordinance that established planning commissions to be set up, zoning started because of this, so that there was a lot that this initiated within the state, and then allowed the counties to kind of take it further or leave it kind of where it was.
And because we decided to leave it where it was, we reference this
We
state
do,
rate.
and then, so, if we go back to our code of ordinance, this one, so here's, you know, this was a section that was set up beforehand. It was replaced with sections of administration, with building and building regulations, with the flood chapter, with roads and bridges, with unified performance standards, which is chapter 32, utilities, which is no longer there as well, and then chapter 38. And this is another portion of that that is referenced.
Right, so there's a lot more meat to this, than just this right here. We
Yeah,
need to
that's
also
what the
reference
code
this thing.
references are.
Okay, I just want to make sure we let the audience know that there is more detail than that snippet.
Yes.
I think we're still in discussion.
We're still in discussion on this item. I would also like to second that. I realize Ms. Spicer's one of the new people on here, but it was very misleading to show 2 sentences and say that's our development standards. In fact, this is our development standards. It's 218 pages. That referenced this document, which is made of 3 chapters, not 24, but 26, 32, and 38, which are the development standards. I don't know how many thousands of words, but this is what a developer has to follow. So I hate to see a planning commissioner get up here and show the audience 2 sentences that it's hard to read on the screen and suggest that that's it. But to correct that, as far as going with ACOG, state your ordinance again, your motion again.
ACOG has been asked to come and review our comp plan, which is, because we're at the 5-year mark, right?
Yes.
So while they're here, if they could look at those three chapters, 32, 38, and 26, and maybe combine those into a unified performance development ordinance, I guess is what you call it. While they're here, maybe they could help us rather than secure a second vendor and maybe a second expense.
So I know that ACOG is coming in, and just for everybody's to be aware, a lot of our discussion and a lot of our development standard is based on, and by state law, our comprehensive plan, which we did 4 years ago. We have to update that every 5 years, which is coming about next year. Much of that we send out to the various departments that are responsible for these things as well as others, to say, where are you on this? As far as ACOG coming in and saying, let's put all this together, I'm absolutely not for them doing so, because there's been no justification to put all these things together. I do know that that has been mentioned by a few commissioners that this is difficult to read, and for some people, I'm sure it is difficult to read. But this is what a developer must follow, and it is thorough. Now, it is not inclusive, and I'm here to suggest that we need to add to these documents, by all means, to slow things down. But I'm not going to vote to combine something when people have said that they didn't really understand it as it was written.
Chapter 32, I thought, wasn't that last updated in 2008? I think that's the one I kind of skimmed just to get an idea about when it was updated.
The last update was December of
I would say it's outdated. It might be there, and you might have a bunch of words here in this binder, but are they up to date? I don't know. 2008, the county's changed a lot since 2008, so it might be worthwhile looking at that.
This section was, it's going to be individual sections.
So this section was actually 2018. Okay.
20, yep,
So
that
we're
one was.
going through and
That's naming a subdivision, I
updating
guess.
these sections that need updated.
There have been updates sporadically throughout. I couldn't tell you when each update was put in for each section.
I see numerous different updates, all the way up to 2019, but
Is there more discussion on this motion?
Yeah, I don't think we can wait around, number one, until a year from now to do anything about this, number one. Number two, I've read through the performance standards, and there's some tweaking that could be done that isn't very difficult. You know, when you look at the, y'all gonna have to help me, because my mind, I'm sorry, is just gone. The zoning, where the,
38,
no, the free zoning.
control.
The control, thank you. The control free. There's no density on there. You know, it would not be hard to say, we're gonna put a density on there. 3 houses to an acre, done deal. What is that? You know, that's an amendment. That wouldn't take a lot to do. Is there some other things that we could do like that? Going through there and saying, well, we can tweak this, we can tweak that. Maybe we need to just make some amendments. I don't think we need to wait a year and a half to get this done. I think it's time we could put something together now. You know, these people want something now. They don't want to sit around for a year to wait.
So all those in favor of waiting the year and a half for ACOG to do their study review to then jump on this, signal by saying aye.
point of order, Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would suggest that you state the motion as
Oh,
three
yes,
suspended.
yes, ma'am, exactly as you said it.
I'm
Could you
going
say
to
it one more
withdraw my
time?
motion and support this idea.
So back to the original subject stuff. There is a tremendous amount that we can do. That Mr. Adams had said. We had heard trees mentioned several times. there are things that we could do to do exchanges within density. We could create some ordinance work potentially that says, okay, if you're on county road or state road, that you've got to have a 50-foot buffer, and for so many acres of that buffer, you can create an extra house of density. So for every acre of tree space, instead of 2 homes per acre, we give you 3 homes per acre, giving some give and take to the different density areas and salvaging some of those trees. Some other things that we could do real quick to slow the development, which we've heard, is the popularity of our area is because of our control-free district. We are a zoned county. The entire county is zoned. The biggest zone is called control-free, which was our basis point where we started. In that, there are several criteria from setbacks and things like that, but we don't have a density of number of homes, which makes it very popular for developers to start coming into. And for anybody who's been over into the Clemson, Pendleton area, they see that type of density taking place. We could easily come in here, like Mr. Adams said, and put a 3 homes per acre minimum, or 2 homes per acre minimum, or an 80-foot wide like you would see in residential district zoning, and slow that development, and then come back and do zones around existing sewer to say, if you will go into these areas, however, you can create at a higher density level. We can do give and takes that says, okay, we're 3 homes per acre, but if you will give up a home on this over here, you can stack that home somewhere else in a net density format. So you have some homes that are on half-acre plots in the same subdivision with some homes that are on acre plots, and then with a small section of townhome type living to it. So there's many opportunities that we have to easily make changes right now without saying, let's overhaul something simply because we don't understand it.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jerry Yentis of District 1 did have a really good idea, and that is that we need to be specific on what ordinances we will address.
Absolutely.
So we need to come up with a list of specific items, prioritize those, specify those in the agenda, and that way, if it's something of particular interest to a group of folks, then they can see that on the agenda and attend the meeting and give their
Absolutely.
feedback.
We've spent the last couple of meetings trying to create some of these lists that we can then prioritize.
I like to make a motion that we take control-free at our next meeting.
As an agenda item?
As an agenda item, and let's pull up the performance standards on that, and let's go through each one, and if we'll have that information beforehand, we can already have our ideas of where we want to tweak that, and let's see if we can get some concrete things down.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
You want a third?
So we need to tackle through each one of these, and I don't know of any other place to start.
So just to comment on that, control-free affects everybody in the county that has any property that's not in zoning, that's not zoned otherwise. So I would expect if we start talking about control-free zoning, everybody from District 2, 4, and 5 ought to be showing up, because now we're talking about their tracts and how they can do business and how they can sell it and how they can subdivide it. So I'm willing to support discussing that at the next meeting. I would expect that to probably be the most controversial piece of our discussion to start with.
Mr. Chair, the majority of the people here tonight are here because of subdivisions. And even though some of those subdivisions may be built in control-free, there are also divisions built in other areas. Let's go after the problem that's perceived tonight. Let's review ordinances on subdivisions. What justifies a subdivision, and go that route. Going control-free, and I understood what you're saying, But generally, your septic system is going to drive your density where there is not sewer. So it's hard to get really more than 3 houses on the acre anyway, without having a large parcel set aside for septic system. So it's, I just don't know if we're gonna get where we need to be by going after one zone class and not dealing with while we're here tonight.
Well, we have a second. We have a second on the floor?
You made the motion, do we have the second on the floor? So we're ready, do we have any more discussion on it? Would you repeat your
Call the question? Oh, you want to do the
motion?
motion?
Well, next meeting, I say we just start with control-free, and let's go through it and see where we can tweak it. I'm concerned about where the sewer is. You know, I'm not concerned where the septic tanks are, because I understand it takes, a third of an acre for a septic tank. But a lot of these areas are where the sewer is. So, take the bull by the horns.
Personally, I would like just to look through what we've heard tonight, compare it to what we had heard last meeting, and see if we can't create, is that in fact our priority? We've been listening to a lot, and I love the input tonight that was much less about one subdivision and much more about, here's things that we need to be looking at. I'd like to digest that, and rather than committing to one particular item now, is my opinion. But if we are ready to vote on this, all those in favor of taking on control-free as the next assignment, raise your hand and say aye. All those opposed? Mr. Gollin? No. Okay.
He's at a party.
All right, we continue our discussion here. I do want to say one thing, because it came at a real opportune and interesting time. And I enjoyed the community input that says, we do need development. We need to control it, understand it, regulate it. And again, there's a ton of regulation. What we're concerned about, it seems like, is we're starting to see this fast-track type housing. There's clear cutting of the land, and it doesn't look like what it used to look like when Crescent developments were mentioned, where trees were kept and houses were built on individual lots in a subdivided parcel that way. It's a different type of construction. We do need some of that, but we can also address some of that with the give and take, like we'd mentioned before. We can address some of that with some of the private road standards. One of the reasons that there's clear cutting right now is there's a difference in private road and public road. And they're the same standard, and used to not be when Crescent was building. They had the ability to not have to take down those trees because there's an extra 30 feet now that has to be clear cut by law that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So there are things that we can make adjustments on very quickly to try to help preserve some of that stuff. But here's something I wanted to see, and I don't know how many people got the paper this week, but I was reading the article about Habitat for Humanity, their expansion of their project. And they're building 27 new homes on roughly 1/3 acre lots at an infrastructure cost of $500,000. That's for 27 homes. These homes are being built with donated labor, with the material cost to build a 1,200 square foot home, they're estimating to be $150,000. That's free labor and donated infrastructure of $500,000. If these homes were being sold as regular development homes, you're looking at $36,000 in lot infrastructure, double for your material cost. You're looking at a 1,200 square foot home at around $330,000. Density allows for those costs to be lower, which allows for that workforce housing. Impact fees cause those fees to go up for individual properties. So we're weighing those two different things. And in weighing that, I want to see one other thing. I don't know how many people saw in the news that Hilton Head is now trying to figure out the negative impacts on what they put in motion that is exactly what we're discussing. Their upper income groups and wealthier retirees drove the home prices up there in Hilton Head. That, along with the I'm in, now close the gate type mentality, drove those prices even more. And in 2015, 3 out of 5 workforce housing people, that's your firemen, your teachers, all of your restaurant staff, and a lot of the support staff on the island, was having to commute off of the island to have a place to live. They don't have workers in the restaurants, healthcare staff, firefighters, teachers, according to the mayor. It's actually caused a lot of the restaurants and services to have to close because those people finally said, well, I'm not commuting all the way over to the island. I'm just going to stay where I am and work here. So all these places are closing down. Well, here's the thing. The mayor just announced last month that taxpayers are now going to fund the construction of subdivisions for workforce housing. They've approved $600,000 for down payments on 12 homes. $600,000 for down payments on 12 homes. Do you think 12 homes is even going to take a bite out of the workforce that's going across the island? We're actually seeing that in our county, or starting to see it now. Like the gentleman mentioned, we don't have east-west corridors. Highway 123 is our only east-west corridor in the county to get you out of the county. And at 5 o'clock, interestingly, we're starting to see rush hour traffic. What is it? It's workers that live in the county that are going out of county. They're headed down to Anderson and they're headed over to Pendleton to where they can afford homes. So as we're looking at subdivisions, and we do want to talk about density, we don't want to get rid of density because we will create what Hilton Head is going through. And I can tell you, at $600,000 a pop for 12 homes, it would cost the taxpayers here significantly more money if we become what Hilton Head did. So we're trying to balance all of this as we go through these standards.
The other concern with lack of density is urban sprawl.
With lack of density? Mm-hmm. Well, we just need to be able to have that workforce housing, in my opinion, or we are shooting ourselves in the foot. I'm not saying that that needs to be on 130. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that what our job up here is not one corridor or one highway. It's an entire county and the needs of that entire county. So, is there any more discussion this evening on where we are?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'd move to have James Coley and his staff review the public comments over the last 2 meetings, make a list of items which could best be addressed to improve our current development standards.
Best be or easiest? What is, take the easy ones first? When you say best, what does that mean?
To me, it's subjective, but I would put it in the hands of James and his staff to review the public comments and over the last 2 meetings, and to make a list of items which could best be addressed to improve our current development standards. Now, what I'm saying is best to me means that we could easily make motions for needed changes or discuss things that, are in the public view.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that motion?
Second, I'll second it.
Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of, and Gary, let me make sure I got it right, instructing staff to make a list of the comments that were made over the last 2 meetings and to prioritize, to
No,
compare.
not prioritize.
It's,
Make a list of items which could best be addressed to improve our current development standards.
okay? Any other discussion?
I'd like to ask the staff if that's
Possible?
something they can do.
I mean, it's subjective, right? It's gonna be subjective, so.
Yes. Now, I think our chair, it'd be very important for him to be involved before we put it on the agenda so that we can, have somebody, in which, a responsible person, our chair, Mike Johnson, to work with that before we present it to the public.
Well, Gary, you had me until that moment.
Okay, well, I'm looking for friendly amendments.
No, I'm joking.
All I'm really saying is that it is subjective. If we don't like what we've got, we don't feel like it's exhaustive, we feel like it's too much to try to handle. I mean, we can, at least once we get the list, we can start prioritizing.
I would agree.
The other option to that, and this is just discussion, is take the items that the last two meetings that have been discussed by the public, each subject that was broached, like tree clear cutting issues, trees, take that and put a number of hits beside it, how many people mentioned it, and then list it to see who said what the most. And then start with that as our priorities.
Okay, I disagree with that suggestion because sometimes one person mentions something that happens to be something that's very important, something that would easily be discussed. So I don't think it's something that numbers necessarily make a difference.
Would it be fair to say that in James's subjective evaluation that he may weigh some of that out? If it's
subjective, I can do it or not.
with the understanding of that.
No. Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Who put this list together that we're looking at?
That was just from last meeting. It was just a bullet point of what I came up with from the last meeting's conversation, of all the things that were mentioned.
So that's a very good starting point.
I'll give you an example. Mark Torres, on the March 4th meeting and in this meeting, really good comments, because we don't have anything, I don't know that we have anything in our ordinances or in our processes that talk about emergency planning and how we address that from a development perspective. And that to me is a concern.
And that's one reason why I'd like to see another list of all the concerns. We can compile them, and together, the ones that stick out to us, we can bring them up as motions. I mean, list everything. Why kick out? Why let James pick and choose?
That was the original intent by putting this list together, was just, this is what everybody said. Everything from dog parks to meeting with sewer authority.
Well, I have something I mentioned twice that wasn't on this list.
What was that?
That was the land use act. And this is something that could be totally separate, but this is out of chapter 6 and it's article 4, and it kicks in, it's a development agreement regulation. When there's 25 acres or more of highway. And to the concern out there about highway, about what's gonna go on 130, that's got over 200 acres of highland. I guess all I need is Mr. Root to check in and see if, does this automatically kick in? Does this apply? Is the developer gonna connect to this? It was applicable to the Kiwi River Preservation Group when they did it back in 2010. And if this current guy who wants to develop on 130 goes through with the deal, does this automatically apply to his proposal on 130? That's what I want to know.
James, would you make that as one of the items in the list? Because I obviously missed it this last time. Mr. Gollum, we're going to vote on your request to get staff to do this. I am hearing that it might serve for us to see the list and compare the two and to make our own priority. Is there any more discussion on Mr. Garland's
Will
proposal?
you ask Mr. Garland, will he be open to a friendly amendment?
Did you hear that?
Yes, I did hear it. I don't think we need a friendly amendment, but because it's something we can do, once we get the list from staff, we can do whatever we want to with it. We can tell them we don't think it's exhaustive enough, we don't think you included everything, we can add things to it. I think what we're talking about here is something in a process that will allow us to start to move forward to prioritize what we're going to talk about.
I didn't think that was the exact motion, and I apologize, it may be late in the day for me as well. My understanding is we wanted staff to come up and make a list and find the things that could be addressed within our current, and compared to our current development standards.
That's true. That is the motion. It's not the full motion, but it is my understanding of what I said.
Okay.
I'd like to hear at least what the amendment is that he's talking about.
We can come up with something else. But
That
I
makes-
think it gives us a good chance to start,
I think we need to be at a
especially
meeting when
getting
we're at a
staff
meeting.
involved.
Mr. Golan, hold on just a moment. Mr. Adams wants to say something real quick.
I'd like to hear what Mickey's amendment was gonna be.
My friendly amendment was going to be just to go through and list everything that was mentioned, and then we can pick from it what we perceive to be important item for us to bring up. And then as a group, we can come together and decide through motions whether we're going to discuss that item or not. That way, there's nothing left out. No one can say, well, you forgot about me.
Mr. Golan, did you hear that as a friendly amendment? We're putting it back to us to prioritize rather than staff to prioritize.
Okay, when you say prioritize, this list that I'm requesting doesn't have any priority, okay? And what I think is a little bit better about asking James to call out, comments that weren't about development standards, and they're not being addressed in our current standards. So therefore, it's not something for us to discuss right now if our goal is to tweak what we've got.
I'll make a motion to amend his amendment for James to compile all the related items into a list for us to review and prioritize ourselves.
I want to, just a point of order. Can we make a motion to amend a current motion in full? Or do we need to vote on that motion first?
You vote on the amendment first.
On the current motion, insert a new motion, or you can
Okay.
have a successful motion.
You've made a motion to amend. I'll second that motion. Any discussion on this?
I'd like for Mr. Haney to read or tell us exactly what the motion says now.
The motion I would like to make is for staff to compile all items of concern that was brought forth so that we may prioritize them ourselves, and through making motions, decide what is the items that we're going to put as the, hold on, let me think my word.
Can I
Is priority,
discuss that?
yes.
I thought that was, the original motion was just, let's make a list.
No.
Now, his motion was to have staff.
Prioritize? Was it to have staff prioritize?
He didn't say prioritize.
It wouldn't prioritize. It was
Just
He
make a
just said
list.
have staff make a list.
It was for staff to make a list, but not to pick out.
To identify the ones that best address current,
So it's,
It had a second element to it.
yeah, so it was going to take away and not include all items.
So you just want to include everything.
I want to include everything.
One of the problems with including everything is if you look at the public comments over the last two meetings, there's a lot of comments that don't have anything to do with what we want to discuss and what we want to prioritize. That's why I was trying to make a case for the staff to look at things that could best be addressed. Okay, now, if they do that and anyone thinks that there's not something covered, just like, for example, Ms. Spicer mentioned that something wasn't covered. At that point, at our next meeting, we can add or subtract things by our process of priority. I'm not trying to exclude anything. Just thinking, just like someone made reference to Mr. Johnson's list tonight, that gives us a good starting point, I think, was the comment. Well, this other list is going to give us an even better starting point, but it is just a starting point, and it's not prioritized.
My only concern, Mr. Golan, if I understand it correctly, and I apologize, is that there will be items that we can't discuss. And I think it would be beneficial for the public to know that, yeah, this item was talked about, but it can't be discussed by us. It's not part of our purview of responsibility. As opposed to James just coming up with, these are things that we think we can easily deal with or that we can quickly deal with. I think that the public needs to know, yeah, this was mentioned, but it's not our area of responsibility. We don't have a say in it, whether it's because state law trumps it or for whatever other reason. So I'm kind of the make the list guy, and then we discuss it in front of the public.
Okay, well, I don't want to say anything else until we vote, so
Okay.
That's great. I mean, it's fine.
So we are voting on an amendment first. Any more discussion on that amendment? It's an amendment to create a list as was similarly done and for it to be discussed at the next meeting
By us.
by us.
Without input from,
No, it would include input as well. It just wouldn't be saying, these are the items that we're going to talk about.
It wouldn't be James' list.
it would just, but he would add the input into what he thinks is important. And he's boots on the ground looking at this stuff every day.
Absolutely.
He would know.
That's up to you. So, however you want to call for the question. Let's roll through.
All right. All those in favor of the amendment to the motion, raise your hand by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Passes.
That
So now amended motion to vote.
the amended motion is up for a vote now. Okay, the amended motion. I'm going to call for the vote unless there's any question there. All right, all those in favor of the amended motion then, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous. Do we want to take on any other parts tonight, or are we ready to call this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.